Good evening, and you are welcome to another exclusive interview powered by Anambra Television. Now, today we are going to be discussing Anambra 2021. Has PDP resolved state leadership crisis in light of today's Appeal Court judgment? And here as our guest, we have a political analyst and good governance advocate. He's also a media consultant, Mr. Chima Christian. Mr. Chima, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you so much for honoring our invitation.
Thank you for having me.
Now, before we go to the topic of today, let us talk about July, the PDP primaries of July. And what's your opinion of that election?
Well, as you know already, I participated actively in that primaries. I wasn't part of the super delegates, but I had interest in that election. I worked closely with one of the 16 Guba aspirants on our platform of our party, the People's Democratic Party. So I was also allowed access into the venue on the account of my proximity to one of the candidates. And then I saw firsthand what's happened at Professor Dora Ekunyeli, a Women Development Center on June the 26th. Events leading up to the 26th were a little bit fuzzy. It was fuzzy because there were lots of judicial landmines that were placed on the part of the party. Shortly before the elections could hold, by the way, there are two ways you could hold your primaries. You can elect to do direct primaries where all registered members of the party who are in good standing with the party are eligible to vote, or you can choose the option of indirect primaries or representative primaries or delegate primaries, whereby all party members have to elect the people we call delegates to go and represent them. So we have 326 political wards in Anambra State. And so each of the 326 political wards are supposed to stand in 3 ad hoc delegates. And then the 326 political wards also have party executives at the ward level. So out of those 17 executives at the ward level, you have 5 of them eligible to vote. So 5 by 326. You also have local government officials, 17 of them are eligible to vote. And then you have state officials of the party who are also eligible to vote, plus people who are sometimes lifetime delegates to the convention of the party or circumstantial delegates. Lifetime delegates are people who have held positions of responsibility either in the party or in the state government. For instance, former governors who are members of the party are eligible to the automatic delegates. Members of the party who are members of the State House of Assembly or the National Assembly, in this case, the Federal House of Reps or Senate, they are automatic delegates. And then you have former principal officers of the National Assembly, State Assembly, and then you have former chairman of the party, both at the state level and then at the national level. So these are people we call statutory delegates, super delegates, which means that they are eligible to vote any time of the day. Now, before that primaries, we got several court injunctions, some of them conflicting, because there was this leadership tussle that emanated. Some people claimed that they are the authentic leadership of the party. That means that out of the 326 political wards, that they are responsible for bringing 5 people per ward. Then out of the 17 per 21 local governments, that they are responsible for bringing those. And then that they are also responsible for conducting the elections that produce the ad hoc delegates. So which means that that court judgment technically took away the authentic leadership of the party, both at the state level, at the local government level, and at the ward level. So there were contentions, there were conflicting court judgments. A party or one of the factions, so to say, claimed they had a court judgment, and the authentic leadership of the party, which is Ubuka Oka and Chief Ndubesingobu, also got a judgment. And now you have 2 high court judgments. Which one do you respect and which one do you discard? And the party, thankfully, had legal advisors who are up to their game, who advised the party that the best way to go into this election is, since you have these people affected by a court judgment, you also have these people affected by a court order, not judgment. So since this issue is a matter still in court, using either of the parties to conduct primaries could affect the credibility of the process. Because if you use faction A, for instance, and then afterwards the court rules that the faction B is authentic, a faction, that means that the candidate that was produced by the other faction has lost, has no legal ground. So the other thing the party did, which I applaud to this day, is to take away all the members of the party who were affected by those conflicting court orders. By this, I meant all the elected ward officials, all elected local government officials, all elected state government officials, and all elected ad hoc delegates to the Congress. Having eliminated all these people because they have court issues to sort out, you are left with people who, no matter what the court decides, cannot affect their participation in the primaries, which in this case are those people I've defined to you are super delegates, and I've defined this criteria of people. So we had the elections come down to the wire that we had only super delegates participating in our primaries. So that in itself reduced the number of participants as to prospective voters. And then when we went there were issues with accreditation because we found that names of people who were no longer in the party found their way to the place. But thankfully, the party was able to sort out those disagreements without those names, putting people who were not supposed to be there, but their names were yanked off. And then the elections went, as we saw. It was a live and televised event, both live streamed on social media platforms and live streamed on national television, national platforms. So you saw that the process, to my judgment, although my preferred horse in the race lost the game, but I see that the process was fairly and sufficiently credible. And we elected a candidate in the name of Valentine Ozigbo. So that's how I appraise the June 26 primaries of my party.
Now, if you say that this election was free and fair, how come that there were still court cases, and there are still court cases against Valentine Ozigbo, the person elected by this free and fair election?
The court cases, some of them are not bordering on the primaries because you have to distinguish the facts and separate all these issues for you to properly understand them. Remember, I told you that before the primaries, that parties or factions rather were contesting who is the authentic leader of the party, who is supposed to bring in people who are supposed to vote in the election. And the two factions, so to say, we didn't have faction, but it was just, those, let's for the sake of this conversation, call them factions. The two factions were in court. And that issue did not stop after the primaries. It continued because, litigations in Nigeria, they have their timelines, and sometimes they just don't expect to get court judgment in a day or in 2 days or in a matter of weeks. So what you saw is that the party applied itself to June 26 primaries using the formula of super delegates, but the pre-primary cases were still in court, and some of them are still in court even as we speak. So the cases you're seeing or you read about on the papers, most of them were not challenging the candidacy of Valentine Ozigbo per se. Some of them were challenging the process that led to the either disqualification or the claim that they were supposed to vote in the elections but didn't participate.
Hello, Mr. Chima.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, the line was breaking. Now, if the super delegates did not solve the power tussle, how come the party was still able to produce a valid candidate? Well, that's one question. And what steps the party take to make sure that this candidate was seen as valid regardless of the power tussle?
Yes, what you've seen now, if you study the court cases that are ongoing, and especially the cases that have been, technically decided or largely decided by the courts, you will see that no court has faulted the process of Ozigbo's nomination. And that's because of the superior legal advice the party got. For instance, if we allow the Chris Uba claimed faction, or in quote, faction of the party to have voted in that election. And today we've gotten a judgment that nullified, or that, laid bare to whatever they are claiming. So you see that we could have run into troubles. Again, the party leadership crisis, or the claimed party leadership crisis, is there, but it didn't affect the process of nomination. Mind you, that if the party had not gotten that legal advice to toe the line it told, it could have landed in problems, because if you had honored this court judgment against the other court judgments, you're now picking and choosing which one to honor. So the party says, since there are two conflicting court orders, we will set aside these people affected by these court orders. Let them go to the court and argue their case. Let us go ahead and conduct the primaries with people who are not encumbered by any court process. And mind you, it has been sufficiently adjudicated, and the court has found that between the state leadership of the party and the National Working Committee of the party, that it is the responsibility of the National Working Committee of the party to organize party primaries. So that has not been in contention. Nobody is in contention about that. So the cases continuing in courts, nonetheless, nobody has faulted, or no court has faulted the nomination process that brought out Ozigbo. And indeed, what the court affirms today is that Ozigbo is the authentic and validly nominated candidate of the People's Democratic Party. Not only did the court make that pronouncement, the court ordered INEC to list him as one of the candidates, in the elections. Not only that, the court found Ugochukwu wanting, frivolous, and they ordered for the 10 million naira as part of, the fee for wasting the court's time and for wasting our candidates, Valentine Ozigbo's time in courts, because they found that the issues they were adjudicating in courts were frivolous.
Okay, remember that you can join us in this discussion simply by raising up your digital hand, and I will try to accommodate as much questions and comments as possible. Now, you know so much about the court case, and like you said, you have an insider information. Can you just give us a background of these court cases, the ones that have been solved and the ones that are currently ongoing against your party and its leadership?
Well, you introduced me as a political analyst and a good governance advocate. You didn't introduce me as a lawyer. So my commentaries here will be restricted to my knowledge. I won't claim to be a lawyer where I'm not. So I will just give you a view or a portfolio of the court cases as far as would be interpreted by a good governance advocate. When you get lawyers on your program, they will adjudicate, or they will contribute on the legalities or otherwise on the technicalities of the cases being so decided by the court. The first is that there was in November, or rather December 2017 Congress that produced Chief Ndubisi Nwubu as the candidate of the party. And that Congress, some people felt that Ubukoka should not be the candidate of the party, but they allowed him to be the candidate of the party till the elections. And by the way, let me veer off legal matters and talk politics now, because there are people in PDP whose stock in trade is to be perpetually aggrieved. And these are people who have cost PDP elections in times past, people whose only business and interest seems to be causing confusion in the party, to cause all of these court issues, because before the announcement, or before the processes leading up to the primaries of the party, we didn't hear of any of these court issues. It was just at the nick of time that people can wake up, go to any court, get a black market judgment or other, and then they claim that they are now authentic leaders of the party. So we had people who approached the courts, told the court that they are now the authentic leaders of the party. And for some reasons, they convinced the courts to agree with them that the authentic leaders of the party. And the courts so ordered that these are the authentic leaders of the party in the states. And then Ubukoka, who was affected by that court order, approached another court and convinced the court that he was duly elected through representative Congress. And he presented evidence, and the court also, agreed with him that he is the authentic leader of the party. Therefore, he is supposed to participate, not only him, but his entire state ESCO and the entire local government ESCO and the entire ward ESCO of the party under his leadership. are supposed to participate in the primaries. Not only that, that the congresses that led up to the election of the 3-man ad hoc delegates or 3-person ad hoc delegates, that he was supposed, it was in order. So those arguments were in court. And so you had 2 judgments, you had 2 orders of different courts. And so it was a litany of court cases. And again, some of them are still being argued in courts as we speak. Some of them have been fairly concluded. But then we still have more, but these are minor legal tussles now. The major issues have been determined. The court has conclusively ordered the INEC to enlist Ozigbo as the authentic and duly elected candidate of our party. And that's where it stands as of now.
Now, how is the party planning to actually solve all this internal crisis that is rocking the party?
Well, when you look at, depending on what you mean by internal crisis, because I told you prior to this time, there has not been any crisis as far as I know. And then there are public documents to these effects, because you will ask these people, if Obukoka was not, you don't like him in 2017 when he was nominated, what did you do? What did you do in 2018? What did you do in 2019? Or you suddenly woke up in 2021 just because Anambra is about to go to the polls. And by the way, this Obukoka that people are challenging his nomination or his being the authentic leader of our party, his term is due to elapse this December. And so these people are not claiming or are not fighting to be recognized chairman of the party, to steer the affairs of the party for long. His time is almost running out. If you wanted to be the chairman of the party, wouldn't you have gone to campaign? Because immediately after Anambra elections, there will be state congresses that will determine the authentic, the chairman of the party. So these people should have spent their efforts campaigning and mobilizing resources to present their own candidates and have their own candidates being duly nominated and elected as the chairman of the party or chairman of different wards or chairpersons of different local governments. But they're not doing this because they're stuck in trade, and the only game plan is for the primaries, for them to determine who becomes the candidate of the party without following due process or due political process. So that on its own, sometimes you might think of it as a crisis, but yes, to some degree, yes, I can agree that it's a crisis. But ultimately, these are people we already know their antecedents. These are people we already know their scores, and we are meeting them in court. They have hired senior advocates. We've hired senior advocates. They know the way to the courts. We also know the way to the courts. So they are eloquently making their arguments. We are eloquently making their arguments. As at today, from the court cases and from the claimed crisis in the party, the authentic leadership of the party, recognized by the National Working Committee of the party, is Chief Obukoka, and then the candidate of the party, recognized by the leadership of the party at the national level, is Valentine Ozigbo. And the court has ordered INEC to so recognize these 2 entities. So that's where we are on the court cases. Will you have a political family where everybody agrees? It will be difficult, especially in a party like ours, which you know that it is not a one-man political party. You look at the people who formed this party, from the G36 to the G to the political party in 19, there were a lot of diverse interests, diverse people forming up the party. So it's not a party of one man speaks. For instance, you could see in other political parties that there seemingly is, they have registered and gotten their licenses as national parties, but you don't find them anywhere. So you have 1 or 2 dominant players issuing shots and calling the shots, and nothing happens. Nobody questions the authority. But in a party like the PDP, there are people with varying interests. Some people want to produce a governor. Some people just want to destabilize the process. Some people want to, there are different interests. So it is not that easy to harmonize and aggregate all these interests. But again, you will see that it's not peculiar to just the PDP. You also find this in the other political parties, both the incumbent political party and also the incumbents at the national level. So what you call crisis, I also agree partly that it's a crisis. It's not peculiar to the PDP. So it comes down to who convinces the masses better that he is the better candidate to beat in the elections. And now that all legal hurdles has been cleared, expect a robust campaign from the Valuable Campaign Organization. And we have 2 months to do this. And at the end of the day, the Anambra will make their choices. And there are people who will still say we don't agree. And by the way, no governor can be made with 100% of the votes. So we are not expecting everybody to agree with us. We just have to get a sizable number, a significant mass, and then a majority votes to be elected the governor of Anambra State. Those are the numbers we are looking at. We will pray and ask and work harmoniously to carry as much people as we can on these votes. But if there are people who feel that they can't, we will try as much as to engage them. But if all efforts at engagement fail, then you can't force them, you can't hold them on a gunpoint to support your candidate. It is still down to their personal choices. You allow them to do what they choose to do.
Okay, now that the appeal court has ruled in favor of Valentine Ozigbo, has INEC listed him as plans in preparation for the election, which is just barely 2 months away?
As you're aware, the court order was just gotten a few hours ago, and I think up to maybe 5 or 6 hours ago. And the courts have processes, right? So you have processes. First of all, you don't expect INEC to obey a court order they see on social media. So we will have to, the lawyers have to do their legal things. But part of it is that you get a certified true copy of the court judgment, and then you send to INEC and bring it to their attention. I'm sure they are monitoring what is happening on social media. I'm sure they are monitoring what is happening on traditional media that have reported the court case, but there will be procedural lines, channels that have to be followed. So yes, we'll have to first obtain the CTC of this judgment and then serve it as a binding order on INEC. And so you expect that this process could take 2 to 3 days, and at the most 1 week, you will see Ozigbo's name listed as the candidate of our party, except in the highly unlikely situation that the Supreme Court decides tomorrow that the Appeal Court judgment has been set aside, which I don't see happening anytime soon.
Okay, I can see Mr. Ilumba's hand up. Mr. Ilumba, the platform is yours.
Yes, I just want to ask a question. With regards to the PDP primaries, how many delegates actually voted? And that vis-a-vis the numbers, who would have voted, who should have voted if there has been no crisis? And do you see Anambrarians viewing it as affecting the legitimacy of the candidacy of Val Ozigbo?
Ideal number that should have voted are anything between 2,500 to 3,000 delegates, right? I don't have a breakdown of the number, but I can help you arrive at that. First is that you have 326 political wards in Anambra State. And if anybody has a calculator there, we can begin to calculate. You have 326 political wards. So multiply that by 5 delegates per ward. That's that on that figure. Then there are 3 ad hoc delegates per ward. Multiply that 3 by the number of wards we have in Anambra State. Then add that to the 17 executives from 21 local governments, 17 by 21. Add that figure. Then you also have the 17 state executive of the party. Add that figure. Then you now have these people I've mentioned, which are about 200 or less than that, who are statutory delegates of the party. So I'm not sure what the exact number is, but it's anywhere between 2,500 to 3,000 delegates of the party. Then again, yes, the ideal situation would have been for these people, because what it means is that they represent all the 326 political wards in the state, which means that these 3 delegates, for instance, the 5 people from the ward, who are they? The ward chairman, the woman leader, the ward secretary, there are 5 of them. These people were elected in 2017 to be ward officials. And when they were being elected to be ward officials, the people who were electing them were well aware that they are automatic delegates to the convention of the party at the state level. So that election happened. So it was a Congress, it was a popular vote that brought them into office. Then there are 3 people we call ad hoc delegates. On the day of the ad hoc delegate election, you file out the people from your ward. Each ward sends in 3 people. So it would have been ideal that these people voted. But when you don't have the ideal situation, when you have conflicting court orders, because The Ubukoka had been affected by a court order of the High Court issued by, I think, Justice Mwabunika or somebody. Then the other faction had been also affected by a court judgment. So because you have court judgment, in order not to run in conflict with the law, you had to, at the risk, the ideal thing would have been that there are no court judgments and these people will vote. But there were court judgments, there were court orders, and to avoid that, you had to reduce it to super delegates. So yes, it didn't in any way affect the legitimacy, because if you look at the people who voted, the 21 local governments were represented, right? And then these people are people who have, for instance, former Governor P2B, who is an automatic delegate, was voted by Anambra people to be governor of this state for 2 years. The people who voted, some of them were in the National Assembly. They were voted to represent people in the National Assembly. For somebody like Chris Azubog, he represents 3 local governments in the National Assembly. For other Federal House of Reps member, for instance, that of Idemili, they were voted by the party to represent them. They were voted by the people. So it is a delegate election. There is no time you will have everybody come to vote in the elections. You have to elect people to cast votes for you. Just like when cases are being argued in the National Assembly, all of us will not go to argue the case in the National Assembly. We have delegates. So those are the delegates. They are cut across all, they are obtained. They don't just fall from heaven. They were delegates by the virtue of the number of votes they have gotten in times past. Some of them who were ward chairmen, who were former party chairmen, were voted to be former party chairmen at the states. Some of them who were former governors were voted to be governors. Some of them who are current serving local government, serving State House of Assembly members, for instance, Honorable Onyebuchi for Honorable Osite, the 6 members of the State House of Assembly who voted in that election were elected by the people to represent them in the State House of Assembly. So if they can take weighty decisions for the people at the State House of Assembly, in the case of National Assembly, if they can take weighty decisions for the people at the National Assembly, again, I believe that when this comes down to the wire, that people can trust them enough to elect them, to delegate that authority to them, for them to choose who among the 16 aspirants in the party is the best fit for the job. And they did that job quite well.
And let me ask a second question. Now, since Mr. Ozigbo emerged as the candidate of the party in Anambra State, has it settled the issue facing the PDP in Anambra State? Or because we are hearing reports of still skirmishes here and there, why has there been several defections from the party to another party? For instance, Senator Stella Odua left the party. Will these defections affect the chances of PDP on November 6th?
For someone like Senator Odua, who has achieved incredible amount of success, both as an appointed minister and then as a 2-term lawmaker, federal lawmaker, you would expect that she has a considerable number of followers. So when she leaves, you also expect that some of those followers, if not all of them, go with her. So you cannot discountenance such a person and flippantly say that, no, she doesn't have weight. No. They do have their weight. It would have been ideal for them to support our party's candidate. But for some reason or the other, they elected to, they felt that there were other parties who offered them whatever they were looking for in political parties. For instance, when people join political parties, they have different reasons for joining them. It's just like when people go to the mall, they have different reasons for going to the mall. People join political parties, sometimes people see them as a vehicle to acquire power. Some people see them as a vehicle to serve the public. Some people, so whatever it is you're looking for in political parties, at some point, if you feel that you're not finding it in that party, you might want to look out for other parties. If there are people in political parties who are looking for money, if they feel that the candidate of their party is not offering them enough money and they have been offered more money on the other side, they could leave. If there are people who are looking for immunity from prosecution for perhaps crimes they have previously committed or alleged to have previously committed, if they feel that the candidate of their party cannot give them protection from such criminal inquest, they could maybe perhaps go to parties where they feel that they are protected. if they also feel that they have other interests, regardless of what their interests are, you will not deny that these are their interests. So at any point they find that those interests are better served elsewhere, they will move. So I don't want to speculate on the reasons why people who left the party left.
Yeah,
But
I
again,
wanted to ask you, so into what category do you think Stella Odua fall into in these your categorizations?
well, I am responsible for my own decisions. It is only God who sees the hearts of man. Unfortunately, I'm a political analyst, but my powers don't get to reading minds. When I acquire the power to read minds, I'll come back on your program and tell you that I've read Senator Dua's mind, and I can tell you exclusively what was on her mind when she made that decision. But as at now, we can only speculate. I don't know what her reasons are.
All right, has there been other defections apart from Stella Odua, from PDP to? Is there a
Yeah,
hemorrhage of support for
there are
okay?
defections into the PDP. There have been defections into the PDP since then. And, it's just a political season. People are moving in and out of political parties. Again, I've told you there are lots of things people are looking for. People are looking for senatorial tickets. People want to be promised that they will retain their tickets. People want to be promised that a lot of people are looking for a lot of things. And some people genuinely are looking for, some people just want to be in power, regardless of which party is in power. So if they feel that there are parties who are now going to be in power, they want to identify with that party. And then if that party loses, for instance, there were people who were shouting Jonathan, 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 Jonathan in 2015. Even his strongest coordinators. Immediately Jonathan lost power in 2015. We saw these same people in PDP. So which tells you that perhaps what they were looking for in a political party is to be in power. And so that suggests to you that if APC leaves power tomorrow, they're not going to stick with that party, that they're also going to join a party which they feel are in power. So whatever it is people are looking for, anytime they find that it's no longer in the party they are in, whatever those motivations are, however right or wrong we might feel about them, they still retain the agency to choose to leave or to stay. So yes, there have been defections. Some people feel that their interests are no longer served in APGA and they are now coming into the PDP. We find that in Orumba, for instance, a former State House of Assembly member, an immediate past State of Assembly member, who is, by the way, a grassroots politician, Romanos Ugochukwu, and his teaming supporters from that local government defected into the PDP. These, you might argue that these are not senators, that they are not, but in the local populace, they have their considerable following. And we are seeing some of these realignments happening. And I'm anticipating that more will happen, both into the PDP and perhaps out of the PDP, both into the other political parties and perhaps out of other political parties. At the end of the day, we will now see who convinces the electorate better that they have the best interest of Anambra at heart. And I feel that at this point, our candidate is doing a good job at that.
Okay, Mr. Chima, let me ask you this. Can you say, to your knowledge, that the emergence of Valentine Ozigbo had nothing to do with any of the internal crisis that is currently rocking Anambra State PDP?
I would ask that you make me understand your question, please. Could you rephrase it or reframe
Can you
it?
say that? Okay, I'm asking you that. Can you say that all your power blogs in PDP currently support the emergence of Valentine Ozigbo as the candidate?
Currently, I would argue that most of them are coming on board. For instance, depending on how you see me, I could be called a power broker in the PDP. You might say that my power is still small, but it's considerable following. Power. And there are other people like me, people above me, partisan politics, people at power, and perhaps people who are still upcoming. So, for instance, a stakeholder like me, I was supporting another candidate, aspirant. I would have loved for my aspirant to be the candidate of the party. It didn't happen. The party chose another person. So I have now fully realigned. And so there were power brokers who didn't support Ozigbo's emergence. But when he emerged, they find reasons to say, okay, the party has decided. By the way, there wasn't going to be a time where the 16 of them will become candidates of the party at the same time. So people who were supporting them were clear-eyed that your candidate could win, your candidate could lose. A typical example is, for instance, there are someone like Senator Uche Kunife, who came dangerously close to winning that elections. He lost that elections by a factor of few votes. And then behind her were powerful brokers, power brokers, who supported her for her to secure 44 votes. There were people behind her, and for her to come third in that elections, there were people behind her. And so when she has seen that the candidate has emerged, by her own acceptance, by her own public remarks, she has said that Ozigbo's emergence is the act of God, that she can't question it. She says she fought gallantly hard to secure the nomination, but she saw that, you know, this guy has taken the nomination. So has now collapsed her structure into the PDP. As she is collapsing her structure, those power brokers, both his media power brokers, both his finance power brokers, both his local power brokers, because you have your media, you have your finance backbone, you have your grassroots backbone. You get? So when you leave or when you come into throw in your support, you are bringing all those your financial backup. You also bring in your media firepower. You also bring in your local grassroots following. So these three are what Ekunife brought to the party. I'm giving you Ekunife as just an instance. And there are former national organizing secretary of the party, former secretary of the party, former this, former that, who supported, but maybe other and former BOT members and current BOT members of the party who supported other candidates, but perhaps the candidate did not win. Some of them, most of them, have now aligned, and as I see in our party meetings and in our party activities, that they are now supporting our party's candidate. Yes, there are a few who feel that interests are better served elsewhere, but the significant majority of PDP stakeholders are in the party, and they are supported and pledged their unalloyed support for Val Ozigbo and his running mate, Dame Azuken and more.
Okay, so how would you react to the accusations that PDP was playing, or PDP is currently playing a religious politics, saying Ozigbo won basically because he was a Catholic and it's causing problem with the Anglican faction and a whole lot of drama? How would you react to this? And also, just before you answer that, how would you also react to the accusation of godfatherism in bringing Valentine Ozigbo as the candidate of the party?
Godfatherism? Did you say godfatherism?
Yes, I said godfatherism.
Okay. Let me start from the first question, which you asked was religious politics. I'll be in denial if I come here on your program to say to the Anambra that there is nothing like religious politics in Anambra State. There is religious politics in Anambra State. And we don't like it, but it's appearing in public discussions. For instance, I, for one, Chima Christian, don't support zoning. I didn't support it in 2017. I didn't support it in 2021. Interestingly, the aspirant I supported in 2021 came from Anambra's South Senatorial Zone. So it was circumstantial that she was from the zone to me. And then again, our candidate is now from Anambra South Senatorial Zone. It's circumstantial to me that he's from the zone. I am not supporting him because he's from Anambra South. But I can't deny the fact that there are people who supported him because he's from Anambra South. So that could have happened in the primaries. For instance, I am not supporting Ozigbo because he's a Catholic. But I won't be amazed if there are people who are supporting him because he's won. So I wouldn't know why people voted. Okay, you may have to assemble all the people who cast their ballots and made Ozigbo the candidate of our party to come on your program and tell you one after the other why they voted for Ozigbo. Some might have voted for him because of his competence, which he is. Some might have voted for him because he's a Catholic, which he is. Some might have voted for him because he's a fine gentleman, which he is. Some might have voted for him because he's a charming, which he is. Some might have voted for him because he's intelligent, which he is. Some might have voted for him because he's humble, which he is exceedingly humble. So there are different reasons for people who might have voted for him. So if they said that being a Catholic is one of those reasons, I can't, find fault in that. And there are people who might be supporting him today for any reasons whatsoever. So I won't question those things. So I don't know why people are supporting him. I am supporting him because I believe, having looked through his CV, having engaged him, seeing his level of humility, and seeing his plans for the Anambra, and seeing the platform and the people around him, I find it in me to say that after looking at all the people on the ballot today, and after having looked into what G.K. Chesterton calls the inner recess of the soul. Having done that soul searching, I find him to be the best fit for the job. So yes, I am supporting him because of that. If there are people who say I'm supporting him because he goes to my church, will you say, don't support me? If there are people who say I'm supporting him because we worked at the same bank, will you say no, don't support him? If there are people who say I support him because I like his style of laughing, people support for different reasons. So I find those arguments, I don't like them. Like I've told you, I don't like religious arguments. I don't like zoning arguments. But hey, it's only circumstantial that people will support because of this. I am not supporting because of that. So I can only speak for myself and not for other people. The second leg of your question borders on Godfatherism, right? And so
Yes.
I will ask you a question. Who and who are these Godfathers, if I may ask, that you've heard of?
Now, rumors and accusations have come up that one of the reasons why we're having internal crisis, why your party is having internal crisis, is because of the backbone of Peter Obi to Valentine Osbo. It is said now that Peter Obi is basically trying to enthrone Valentine Osbo as the next governor, which is Godfatherism in this aspect, and which has been said to be one of the reasons why your party is having internal crisis also.
It's
Do you
interesting
agree with
to
this?
me because I was just having a haircut. If you notice, I have a new haircut. And I saw people in the salon who were arguing about Davido and Fino, which is a bigger artist. And they were arguing about money in their bank accounts. They were arguing about a whole lot of things. And what I found and I picked from that discussion is that people sometimes tend to ascribe power to people who don't have it. And sometimes people tend to ascribe omnipotence to people who don't have it. For instance, people will look at me and say, oh no, he's wearing a nice shirt, he must be a billionaire, or he must be a this or that. I participated in that elections, and I know that Peter had only one vote. He had only one vote. And in fact, people tend to overestimate the powers he has. Peter is a former governor. Yes, you can say that he governed well, but he's no longer in power. Peter was a vice presidential candidate. You could say that he's still the vice presidential candidate of the party, but he's not in power. But people often tend to exaggerate his influence. I would not say that perhaps he didn't support Ozigbo or did not or support this, that, the other. But if anybody was banking on P2B's support to be the candidate, that person would have been utterly disappointed. Because P2B alone cannot deliver you to become the candidate of our party. And it didn't happen in Ozigbo's case. If anybody is banking on Peter's support to become the governor of Anambra State, that will also not happen because as influential as he is, and I give it to him that he's influential, Peter Obi alone cannot deliver you to become the governor of Anambra State. So I find that some of the accusations are largely overestimation of capacities the man clearly doesn't have. Okay, I agree that he has capacity, but sometimes I find that people overestimate or exaggerate these capacities. Having said that, I would say that Peter will be governed well as a governor, right? If, for instance, you are to choose between two mentors, and who are the people making these accusations? They are people from other political parties. When you place side by side Peter Obi's performance as the governor of Anambra State and Governor Willie Obiano's performance as the governor of Anambra State, who will you volunteer to learn work from? If there is a mechanic who has fixed vehicles and all the vehicles he fixed are going in shape, and there is another mechanic who fixes a vehicle, and before you drive 1 mile, the vehicle knocks engine. Who will you intend for to learn mechanics work? So you rather intern with someone who has done the job. And I subscribe to political mentorship. As of today, I'm being mentored by his honor, the former SSG of this state, Oselu Kobaze, who I find to be an incredible gentleman, who has served his way to the top. And by the way, you find mentors in business. You find mentors in law. That after your 5 year in school, after your law school, you find that a lot of young lawyers go to intern at the offices of established lawyers. You find a mentorship in business, the Iba Boy apprenticeship system. You find mentorship even in medicine. The young medical doctors intern, or so to say, learn from people they call consultants. You find it in virtually all professions. So why not in politics? Why not in politics? Even in religious activities, you find that young or newly minted reverend fathers, or in the case of reverends or pastors, you find that they subscribe to the leadership of bishops, of established or people who have stayed in the process far longer than they have. Our candidate, Valentino Zibo, has paid his dues in the private sector, and his records are there to show that he has done exceedingly well. But in politics, he is fast learning the ropes. But why not? Why do I have to go to the mountain to get the 10 Commandments, whereas I can just sit down with Moses, who had gone to the mountain, fasted for 40 days to get it? Why do I have to learn from my experience, whereas I can pick up a book and learn from someone's experience? So we are all subscribed to different forms of mentorship. Anytime you pick up a book to read, you are subscribing to a mentorship, because you are mentored by the ideas in that book. And even the person who wrote that book also got the ideas from someone else and fine-tuned it. So whether they be verbal associations, me discussing with you, you knowing how I did it and how you might better fine-tune your strategies. So they are all different layers and levels of mentorship. So I don't see P2B as a godfather to Valentino Zibo, but I find that they are friends. I also find that there are some things P2B perhaps know that Val could leverage. And that relationship, to the best of my knowledge, could not be described as godfather, godson relationship. It is not the case.
Okay,
Yeah.
just before we let you go, let us hear from Elumba. Mr. Elumba, the platform is yours.
My last question to our guest will be, first, how many candidates are we having for this November 6th election at the moment?
We have 18 political parties, and at the moment, the 18 of them are fielding candidates, all up.
They're
So we
all
have,
strong, yeah?
not all of them are strong.
Okay,
Not
how
all
do
of them.
you, why we still have you here? You have a very good power of analysis. Can you rate them at the moment? Don't rate your PDP, just rate the others. We know you rate.
No, I will not agree. I will not agree. I will not agree. And then let me give you my analysis. When you go to the market and talk to the people, and this is the God honest truth, this is not me promoting my party. I have discussed with Stella Odua's people. They say, our madam has left, she has her reasons. We will follow her because we don't want to take away her meal tickets. But when it comes down to the wire, we will not vote this party. Clearly. And some of these political leaders who are leaving, they might think they are living with their followers, but there is something the Anambra has for APC. There is a reason they give APC only 5% of votes consistently. There is a reason they have consistently rejected the party. There is a reason people are sentimental about it. They have reasons to feel about what they call Fulani agenda, what they call headsman agenda. And people who look at what happens in Obabi, in Uwani, also one in Enugu, and people who look at what is happening today in Imo State have every reason to be apprehensive that perhaps if they vote in this party to power, that such could happen in Anambra State. So you have people thinking about that. And remember, elections are not won on social media. Elections are not won. It is when people go to make their ballots that a lot of things are going through their mind when they make that critical decision. So as of today, when I talk to the people, I find that they say to me, oh, your party has a good candidate. Oh, your party, this is your election to win. I just wish you guys solve your internal crisis. That's what I'm hearing. So as I can tell you, this election is PDP's to win. And we have shown that these internal crises, that we are solving them one step at a time. ABGA is a strong political party. You cannot discountenance that in the States. No fair analysis would discountenance that ABGA has considerable following in the state. And by the way, they've been in power for 8 years of P2B and now nearly 7.5 years of Governor Willie Obiano. So you cannot say that they are not strong. They are strong. But the thing that is that the party has been mismanaged over the years. Look at the primaries they conducted in Imo State. Look at the primaries they conducted in Anambra State in 2019. A lot of the people they defrauded in what they call the primaries, and even look at the primaries they conducted, the primaries that produced the candidates. And so people feel embittered. And apart from the political process, look at the governance style. There are people who believe that Obiano did not acquit himself creditably. And because of this, they feel that ABGA has lost its relevance in the state. And that is an ongoing argument. These things are left to be seen on the 6th of November, when the elections will be cast, and on the 7th, when we hopefully expect the votes to be counted and for the results to be announced. So as of today, PDP stands a very good chance of winning that election. That is my analysis. And this is not just me being partisan. This is me telling you the God honest truth that I believe to be the truth.
Mr. Chima, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, now, just before we let you go, do you think, or do you know, or are you aware of any plans of your party to unite the Ndubisi faction and the Ubas faction?
I've told you clearly there is nothing like faction in my party, right? There is nothing like faction in the party. I've mentioned to you that these court cases or court orders, by the way, who are these people, right? What congresses brought them? There is nothing like faction in the party. You just have few stakeholders who is stuck in trade. By the way, look at the last 4 governorship elections in Anambra State. And you will find that this same person, at every election, he drags his party to the court. At every election, he drags his party to the court. At every election, he drags his party to the court. At every election. So you ask, what is his interest? What is his interest? And so if you find that there is someone whose interest or membership of the party is because he is being used by perhaps elements outside of the party to cause distraction, and if you've exhausted all avenues of peacemaking efforts, and you find that they are not interested in the peace and the prosperity of the party, if you find that they are pursuing other objectives, you have to go along and pursue what your objectives are and leave them. No governor in Anambra State will get 100% of the votes. Even the 21/21 governor did not get 100/100, right? So I don't expect that Ozigbo will win by getting 100% of all Anambra votes. That is also the same way I don't expect that he will get 100% of the support of political stakeholders, whether they claim they are PDP or not.
Okay, and just for let's go again, last question now, because our time is fast spent. So just the last question. What do you propose that the PDP can do in gaining the trust of Anambra State in respect to the elections?
We're already doing that. We are communicating to the people. For instance, go drive around Anambra State. You will see our posters and our billboards flooded around the city. Right? You see the immediate exposure where we are communicating with the people down to the grassroots. And yes, you could have said that the distractions of the courts slowed down the process because there were people who we were talking to and they said, how are we sure you're going to win at the court? We have won. And so they say, we like you, but you're not in, the INEC has not recognized you. Today or in the next couple of hours or days, INEC will recognize us by the order of the Court of Appeal. And so we are going to continue what we're doing, which is engaging the grassroots, reaching out directly to these people who will vote, and tell them why it should be us. With all humility, we will not brag and say, oh, we are the smartest people in the world. Oh, I am a professor. Oh, I am that. Oh, I am the bastion of all political knowledge. Oh, I am the godfather. Oh, I'm going to win this election. You know, there are people going around the states telling people, whether you vote us or not, we're going to become. They're already telling people not to vote them. And we like that message because since you don't need the people will go to the people who feel that they need them. We need the people to vote because we know that it is difficult, if not impossible, to rig the elections. The elections will be won by popular votes. People will queue up, people will vote, and those votes will count. And that's why we are getting to those people who are voting, taking our message to them, telling them, Anambra Chawabu is our message. We want Anambra to Chawabu. And our project is because Naka Chukwudia. So that is the message, and that is the message we'll continue to communicate with all humility and with all sincerity. Let the braggadocious people brag about their powers that they don't have. Let those who feel that they are all intelligent be telling people how intelligent they are. But for those of us, we tell people, you need hospitals, this is how we feel that it should be done. And if you feel that we're not getting it right, tell us your ideas, share your ideas with us. So we're approaching voters with all sense of humility, and let us at the end of the day know whose formula will work. Whether the formula of arrogance or whether the formula of saying we don't need your votes, don't vote us, we'll still win. So it's down to November 6th, we'll see what happens.
Okay, thank you so much. We have been discussing with a political analyst and good governance advocate. He's also a media consultant, Mr. Chima Christian. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
And our topic today was Anambra 2021. Has PDP resolved state leadership crisis in light of today's Appeal Court Judgement? Remember to follow Elubam Television on all social media platforms, especially on Facebook and YouTube, where this program was streamed live and recorded. Also follow me, Augusta Neka, across our social media platform. And from me, it's good night. Thank you so much.
Brother Chima, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so very much for having me here, and I appreciate the opportunity. May I also compliment your team for the incredible work you guys are doing. I find that your interest in Anambra State is quite commendable, and that the platform you are using it to throw light on the happenings in the PDP and APC, but also ultimately to educate Anambra voters on how to make their choices and make their choices right. So thank you for the work you're doing.